Welcome to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today, we're really going deep, diving into what it's like to be a teenager with DCD.
Developmental coordination disorder.
Yeah, DCD. So we want to understand how this condition, where everyday movements are tough, coordination's a challenge. How does that impact teens as they're going through adolescence?
Right.
We've got some really cool stuff to dig into. We've got excerpts from Amanda Kirby's book. She's like a leading expert on DCD.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
And then we've got some really interesting case studies, too, that help, bring these challenges to life.
Yeah, it's a really key stage of development, adolescence. And DCD just kind of adds this whole other layer.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely more than just, being a little clumsy. It's
Well,
more than that. Like, we're talking about, really struggling with things that most people don't even think twice about, like tying your shoes or writing neatly or even just catching a ball.
oh, for sure.
And it's not about intelligence, right? Like, teens with DCD are just as smart as their peers.
Absolutely. They
It's just that it's almost like their brains and their bodies
Yeah.
aren't quite talking to each other the same way when it comes to movement.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually. And it's important to remember that, DCD doesn't just magically go away when kids get older. Like research shows that it can actually stick around into adulthood, especially if they don't get the right support.
So imagine feeling different already because you have these coordination challenges.
Yeah.
And then you throw puberty into the mix.
Oh, yeah.
All those growth spurts, changing bodies, all the social pressures that come with being a teenager. It's a lot.
It really is. And for teens with DCD, those growth spurts can actually make their coordination worse.
Oh, wow.
So suddenly they're clumsier than ever, and that's when fitting in and looking cool starts to feel super important.
Oh, man. That must be so frustrating. Like feeling like your body's working against you, especially at that age.
Yeah, it's tough.
Plus, we can't forget that DCD often kind of comes along with other challenges too, like ADHD
Right.
and dyslexia.
That's a really key point. You see, if a teen is also struggling with focus, ADHD or reading dyslexia, it's like it can create this it's like a snowball effect almost. They're facing multiple hurdles all at once.
Yeah.
So for example, just imagine a teenager with DCD and ADHD trying to keep up in a busy classroom. They might be fidgeting, because of the ADHD, struggling to take notes because of the DCD, and then feeling completely overwhelmed by all the noise and all the activity going on.
Yeah.
It's a lot to juggle.
That sounds incredibly overwhelming. And I remember you mentioning that even seemingly simple tasks at home
Yes.
can become huge obstacles for teens with DCD.
Absolutely. One of the case studies that really stuck with me was about Kathy, this 15-year-old girl who actually cut herself quite badly trying to shave.
Oh, no.
And it seems like such a small thing, but for someone with DCD, even basic self-care
Yeah.
can be a real challenge.
Wow. That really highlights how real the impact is.
Right.
It's more than just an inconvenience. We're talking about safety and well-being.
Exactly. And it can lead to a tricky dynamic at home too, because teens with DCD might need more help from their parents
Yeah.
just when they're craving independence the most.
So it's like this push and pull
Yeah.
between needing support but also wanting to do things on their own. And that's got to be tough.
Oh, it is. It is. And then you add siblings into the mix,
Yeah.
who might be more capable in certain areas.
Right.
And you can see how resentment could build on both sides. It's a delicate balancing act, for the whole family.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of navigating these complex environments, secondary school, that's a huge transition for any teenager.
Oh.
But for those with DCD,
Absolutely.
it can feel like a whole new world of challenges.
It is. Larger buildings to navigate, more teachers to keep track of, faster paced lessons, higher expectations. It's a lot for any teen to adjust to.
And I can only imagine how much harder that is when you're also dealing with DCD.
Kirby actually uses this really powerful analogy in her book to kind of illustrate this point. It's the animal school analogy.
Okay.
And it shows how a one-size-fits-all approach to education just doesn't work, especially for diverse learners like
No.
those with DCD. So for example, imagine a classroom where the only way to learn is by climbing a tree. Well, the monkey would do great.
Yeah.
Right. But the fish would be left floundering. It's the same with teens with DCD, They need a learning environment that's tailored to their unique needs.
I love that analogy. That really hits home because you can't expect everyone to learn the same way, right?
Yeah.
And it makes you realize that creating a truly inclusive school environment really means like recognizing and supporting these differences.
Exactly. It's about understanding that not all students thrive under the same conditions. And speaking of thriving, we've been focusing a lot on the challenges so far, but it's really important to highlight that, teens with DCD, they can and they do succeed with the right support.
Right. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that DCD is just about clumsiness,
Right.
but it can really significantly impact a teen's social and emotional well-being too.
Oh, absolutely. Teens with DCD, they might misinterpret social cues, struggle to follow conversations. They might even come across as rude or aggressive, even though they don't mean to be. So imagine the frustration of wanting to connect with your peers, but feeling like your body language is constantly sending the wrong message.
And I'm guessing that navigating the world of dating and relationships as a teenager is already hard enough.
Yeah.
But with DCD added into the mix,
Absolutely.
it must be even more challenging.
Yeah. The social anxieties and insecurities that many teenagers experience, they can be amplified for those with DCD. But as with all the challenges we've talked about, there are ways to help them build confidence and develop those social skills. For example, one of the case studies in the source material features a teenager named Mark, who found a lot of comfort and solace in golf. It was a less socially demanding activity where he could excel and build his self-esteem.
I love that example. That's fantastic. It really highlights the importance of finding activities that play to a teen's strengths and give them that sense of accomplishment.
Right.
Could be anything, right? From art to music to coding. As long as it lets them shine. And it's not just about finding the right activity, is it? It's also about creating that supportive environment where they feel comfortable taking risks and trying new things.
Exactly. It's about fostering a sense of belonging and understanding, letting these teens know they're not alone and that their challenges are very real.
It sounds like creating that sense of support is really key, both at home and at school. And I'm curious to learn more about some of the specific strategies that parents and educators can use to help teens with DCD thrive.
We'll definitely dive into those strategies in more detail in just a bit. Stay tuned.
So before we were talking about how important that feeling of support is for teenagers with DCD.
Right.
And it made me think about all the little things, all those little moments that might actually be really stressful for them during a typical day at school.
It's amazing how often we overlook those little things, those seemingly insignificant moments that can actually be huge sources of stress for teens with DCD.
Totally. Like even something as basic as changing for PE.
Oh, yeah.
Could be a real struggle.
Exactly. Imagine, fumbling with laces and buttons, tight spaces, feeling rushed and self-conscious. It's a recipe for anxiety.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you're already worried about your coordination. Well, absolutely. And then there's the locker situation. I mean, I remember I felt flustered, trying to remember my combination back in middle school. But for a teen with DCD, all those fine motor challenges, that can turn just getting into their locker into a nightmare.
And it's not just, about being late for class. It's about feeling exposed, feeling different, potentially becoming a target for teasing or bullying.
It's heartbreaking to think that something so simple could be such a source of stress.
Yeah, and that's why Kirby emphasizes the importance of, anticipating these pain points and coming up with creative solutions. So for the locker issue, it could be as simple as a different type of lock, a designated locker buddy, or even just a strategically placed locker.
I love that, thinking outside the box,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
But what about academics? We talked a little bit about note-taking and exams, but are there other classroom challenges that come up a lot?
One that really jumped out at me was the issue of auditory processing. Remember, for some teens with DCD, it's not just about coordinating movements, it's also about how they process information.
So even if a teacher is giving clear instructions, they might not be able to absorb it all.
Exactly. They might miss key details or misinterpret directions or simply just get overwhelmed by too much verbal input. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose.
Wow, that adds a whole other layer of difficulty on top of everything else.
It does.
No wonder school can feel so overwhelming for some of these kids.
Yeah. And then there's math.
Yeah.
Which, as we know from the source material, can be a particular area of struggle for teens with DCB.
That's interesting. Why is that? Is it directly related to the coordination issues?
Well, it's complex, but research suggests there could be a connection between DCD and difficulties with spatial reasoning, visual processing,
Yeah.
and understanding abstract concepts, all of which are really essential for math.
So it's not just about like struggling to write the numbers neatly. It's about grasping those fundamental mathematical ideas.
Exactly. And the source material highlights that recognizing patterns is also crucial in math,
Right.
and that's something that teens with DCD may find particularly challenging.
So what can teachers do to make math more accessible for those students? Because I imagine a traditional math classroom could be pretty tough.
Well, Kirby suggests using more visual and hands-on approaches, breaking down complex problems into smaller steps,
Okay.
and being patient, being patient with the pace of learning. It's about meeting them where they are and providing the scaffolding they need to succeed.
And I bet technology can play a role here too,
Oh, absolutely.
like using visual aids or interactive math programs.
For sure. And don't forget about assistive technology for note-taking and writing,
Yeah.
like speech-to-text software or graphic organizers. These tools can be game changers for teens who struggle with handwriting or keeping up with the pace of lectures.
Okay, so we've talked about academics, the school environment, and even those everyday challenges like getting dressed and dealing with a locker.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the social and emotional side of DCD? We can't underestimate how important that is.
You're absolutely right. Imagine, being a teenager who constantly feels awkward and clumsy and misunderstood.
Yeah.
It can really chip away at your self-esteem.
It makes sense that teens with DCD might be more prone to negative self-talk
Oh, yeah.
or even withdrawing from social situations altogether.
Exactly. And it can become this vicious cycle. The more they struggle, the more they isolate themselves, which just makes it harder to develop those social skills.
So the role of parents, teachers, even peers
Right.
becomes even more crucial in this context. It can be such a powerful source of support and encouragement.
Absolutely. First and foremost, it's about fostering a sense of belonging and understanding. Letting these teens know they're not alone, that their challenges are valid,
Right.
and that their strengths are equally important.
Just feeling seen and heard can make such a difference.
Oh, absolutely.
But are there other specific things that these supportive adults and friends can do to help?
Well, one thing Kirby emphasizes is the importance of helping these teens develop positive self-talk.
Okay.
It's so easy to get caught up in what you can't do, but it's essential to focus on what you can do well.
So instead of like dwelling on their mistakes,
Yeah.
encourage them to celebrate their accomplishments,
Yeah.
acknowledge their strengths.
Exactly. And remind them that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. It's what makes us unique.
Right.
Another helpful strategy is role playing.
Mm.
This allows teens to practice different social situations in a safe environment and build confidence.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's like a dress rehearsal for real life.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of, providing opportunities for positive interactions. It could be through clubs, sports, volunteering, or even just hanging out with a trusted friend. It's about creating those supportive spaces where they can practice and grow their social skills.
And for teachers, I imagine it's important to be mindful of how you group students for projects and activities.
Oh, for sure. Pairing a teen with DCD with a supportive peer can make a huge difference. It's about creating a sense of teamwork and camaraderie where everyone feels valued and supported.
I love that. It's those small, thoughtful gestures that can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
But thinking beyond the school years, how can we help these teens develop a positive vision for their future?
Right.
High school isn't forever,
No.
and eventually they'll be transitioning into adulthood.
That's where long-term planning comes in.
No.
And it needs to start early. Kirby talks about the importance of involving the teen in these conversations, asking them about their interests, their dreams, what they envision for their future.
So it's not about adults dictating what they should do. It's about empowering them to take ownership of their journey.
Exactly. And it's about being realistic about the challenges, but also focusing on the possibilities. Kirby suggests breaking down those big long-term goals into smaller, more achievable steps.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It feels less overwhelming that way.
Exactly. And it's about exploring different career paths, considering, further education options, thinking about what kind of support they might need to succeed in those environments.
I love how Kirby talks about finding those alternative routes to success. It's not always about following a traditional path, right? It's about finding what works for the individual.
Exactly. Exactly. And there are so many resources available to help with this transition, like vocational training programs, support groups, even assistive technology for the workplace.
All of this is so encouraging. It feels like we're starting to paint a much more hopeful picture for teens with DCD.
That's the goal. Because, while DCD presents unique challenges, it doesn't define a person's potential. With the right support and a belief in themselves, these teens can absolutely thrive.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We should end on that point. We'll be right back after a quick break, and we'll come back to wrap up this deep dive with some specific tips and resources for parents, educators, and anyone who wants to support teens with DCD. Stay with us. We're back. And, I think for anyone listening who's connected to a teenager with DCD, whether it's a parent or a teacher or even a friend, it can feel, kind of overwhelming sometimes.
It's true. Knowing where to start and how to best support these teens can be a challenge in itself.
So let's get practical. Like, what are some things that people can do to make a real difference in a teen with DCD's life?
Well, first and foremost, open communication is key.
Right.
Talk to the teen. Really listen to their concerns. Try to understand their perspective.
Makes sense. It's about meeting them where they are, both literally and figuratively.
Exactly. And avoid making assumptions. Just because a teen can do something one day doesn't mean they'll be able to do it consistently. DCD can be unpredictable.
Right.
So flexibility and patience are crucial.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder. It's about recognizing that their struggles are real.
Yeah.
And not just dismissing them as laziness or a lack of effort.
Right, exactly. And once you've established that open line of communication, there are some specific strategies you can use to support them. Kirby's book is full of great ideas.
Yeah.
And one that I find particularly helpful is breaking down tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
So instead of saying clean your room, you might say, let's start by putting all the clothes away.
Exactly. It makes the task less daunting. And it allows them to experience a sense of accomplishment along the way. Visual aids can also be incredibly helpful. Think checklists, schedules, or even just a picture card to remind them how to tie their shoes.
Right. It's all about making things as clear and concrete as possible.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of assistive technology. We've already mentioned speech-to-text software and graphic organizers, but there are so many other tools out there. Digital recorders for taking notes, timers for managing time, even apps that help with organization and planning.
It's like creating a custom toolkit for them.
Exactly.
Tailored to their specific needs.
Precisely. And remember, it's not just about the practical stuff, you know. Supporting those social and emotional needs is equally important.
We talked about earlier how crucial it is to help these teens develop positive self-talk.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. One thing you can do is encourage them to focus on their strengths. Celebrate their accomplishments no matter how small they may seem. Help them shift their perspective from I can't do this to I'm good at that.
So it's about reframing their internal dialogue.
Exactly.
And building that self-confidence.
Exactly. And remind them that, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. It's what makes us unique. Another strategy is to provide opportunities for positive social interactions.
Like we were talking about earlier, finding clubs, sports, or activities where they can connect with other people who share their interests.
Right. And role-playing can also be a great way to practice different social situations in a safe environment. It allows them to build confidence and learn those social cues that might come naturally to others.
These are all such great tips. But what about resources? Where can people go for more information and support?
Well, Kirby's book itself is a fantastic resource. It's full of practical advice.
Yeah.
And she actually includes a whole section of useful addresses, organizations, and websites.
That's great.
And I know there are also some really great online communities for parents and teens with DCD.
Yeah.
These communities can provide a sense of connection, shared experiences, and invaluable advice from people who truly understand the challenges.
It's that reminder that you're not alone in this.
Exactly.
So to kind of wrap things up here, I think we've learned so much about the unique challenges that teens with DCD face.
Yes.
But also the incredible resilience that they show.
Right.
And it's clear that with the right support, they can achieve amazing things.
They absolutely can.
And for anyone out there who's feeling lost or unsure of where to turn, remember, there are people who want to help.
Yes.
Reach out to those organizations. Connect with those online communities. And most importantly, keep advocating for the needs of these amazing teens.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of DCD in teens. And until next time, stay curious.